evening to those of you that are all around the world. We know that YouTube is in many, many places. So welcome back, you guys. Oh my goodness. Let's jump into our notes. So remember, this is your wedding series. We are planning your wedding starting at 14-year-old you, obviously. And obviously, we're going to fast forward because nobody gets married at 14 anymore. So we are going to fast forward to when you are at that age where you are getting engaged. And that's a different age for everybody, but we are going to be planning your wedding series. So what is your wedding series? It's a slew of events that helps you to plan your wedding and tell your love story. So you get to tell your love story through those events, and those events include the proposal. It includes the engagement, party, and photo shoot. It includes the bridesmaids proposal, groomsmen's proposal, if you're going to have that, as well as the bridal shopping. So the wedding dress or wedding gown shopping. You guys all know I like to call it a gown. Then you have the bachelorette, bachelor, or hen do parties, depending on what part of the world you live in. And then we lead into like welcome parties if you're going to have that before the wedding. Oh, and right before that, we have the rehearsal dinner and the rehearsal. So you get to practice walking down the aisle and what it feels like. For some people, that will be like their first time actually getting to practice down the actual aisle that they are going to be getting married on. So it's a very exciting time. After the rehearsal, then we usually have the dinner as well as maybe a welcome party for those who don't live in the place wherever you're living or the place wherever you're having the wedding at. Then the next day we have the get ready with me, which is a whole to-do that's getting ready for the bride. And sometimes you even see clips of the groomsmen getting ready too. It's such a fun event part. And then we have the wedding day ceremony and the wedding day reception. All these things don't have to be done. Some people even add on and having like a huge after party or like a brunch after the wedding reception night or day. And so they'll do something the following day as well because they're just not ready for it to end. And I totally understand. I totally get it. So yeah, you don't have to do all those events, but it does help you to get to tell your story. And that's why you have a wedding series. Now, why am I here? As your content creator, I provide affordable videography for all of those wedding events that I just mentioned. You're going to be trying to hold your cell phone. Your guests are going to try to be holding their cell phone, and you won't be able to live in the moment if you're doing that. So I capture everything because we're living in a content creator world, okay? This is a content creator life that we are all living. But I am your personal paparazzi, and I am capturing all those moments on my cell phone lens for you. So you get everything back like super, super quick. It's amazing. You get to share all that stuff on all of your social medias, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, Pinterest if you're on that as well. And so you get everything in like 2 days, and it's super cool because then you don't have to wait and you don't have to be worried about, well, did anybody get me doing this or with my family or with your dog that you had in the wedding, whatever it might be, whatever is special to you. So lights, camera, action. Let's start this show. Let's start the show. Here's a little advice from me. Let's talk about it and see your story unfold. All right, you guys, I'm going to jump right in here into my notes for today. We are in episode 8. We're in episode 8, and this is your wedding series. That in-between phase when you have wedding and marriage in mind. So this is dating in that in-between phase when you have marriage and a wedding in mind. Okay, so we're now really, really fast forwarding. We're obviously not talking about 14-year-old you anymore. Those of you that want to watch those, please go back and watch episodes 1 through 7 so that you can catch up and be at this phase that we are right now in episode 8. Okay, so this is whatever age you are in the point of your life where you're dating for marriage. Okay, hopefully you really got something out of the advice in the first 7 episodes. I thought that they were pretty spicy And in part 4, we did have 2 parts to that. So in episode 4, we did have 2 parts, just so you know if you are keeping up. All right, so that in-between phase, that time between dating and a proposal is crucial. It's where the foundation for your future marriage is built. Guys, it's such an important time. The purpose of this episode is to give you my advice on how you can use this in-between time, this in-between phase wisely while living separately and waiting for the right moment for the proposal. So you don't need to go and rush this phase just because you really, really want to be married. I get it. But maybe if you're ready, you're ready. Maybe if you're ready, you're ready. Nobody can tell you when you're ready. You need to be able to know in your heart of hearts that you're ready. And that's for both partners, okay? If one is ready and the other one is not, that's going to be a discussion for you guys. Growing individually, maintaining healthy boundaries, and preparing for the next step. Part 1, understanding the purpose of the in-between phase. Why it's important. Most people may not think that the in-between phase between getting married and prior to that, being in the dating phase, isn't that important. And that's because they're probably doing the worldly way of doing this, which is they've already moved in together and all of that. And that's not what my episodes are about. If that's something that you're looking for, I'm sure there's a lot of, help that you can find out there for that. But this is for people who are trying to date the right way for marriage, and they want to have a strong foundation for their marriage and for building a family. Okay. So just remember that this is definitely not going to be giving you advice on what the world can already do for you. Okay. So I hope that this is helping. I really do. I really want to hear from you guys. And don't let this just be me talking and me giving, all of this advice and all of my thoughts, and you not share some of yours. Okay. Not saying that you need to share all of them, but it is important that we try to keep an open communication, an open platform here, that it's not just you take of this advice and not really helping others or sharing your thoughts. Now, if you've got some really super negative thoughts that are completely opposite of what I am sharing, please feel free to keep those to yourself. Seriously, nobody wants to hear that. So, if it's constructive criticism or just, you're just giving your thoughts in a respectable way, that's different. But if you are being nasty, please don't share that. Please don't share that. Okay. So this is for those that clicked on this episode who want some genuine advice. All right. So like we said, part 1, why is this phase so important? This phase tests compatibility. It will test you. It will test your communication as well and your patience. So you have to have patience when you're dealing with anybody else besides yourself. A lot of us even have to have patience with ourselves. So let's just be real. Okay. Let's just be real. So it's going to test your compatibility. It's going to test your communication skills with one another. How do you guys talk to one another? How do you guys treat one another? Okay. It allows both individuals to prepare emotionally. We've talked about emotions. Financially, we've talked about finances. Spiritually, for marriage. So this time is going to continue to test you guys as individuals, but also as a pair on your thoughts on these things for moving forward and becoming one. Okay. If you have somebody who has a lot of finances and they're like, you know what, whoever I marry, they're going to have to be okay with signing a prenup agreement. All right. Are you on board with that? Like I said, this is that time for you guys to be testing your compatibility, testing your communication skills. Can you talk to each other about something as important as a prenup or a no prenup. You don't have to do one, right? So are you guys willing and able to do that? These are just some things that could come around in this phase of that in between. You also are setting realistic expectations. So these are realistic expectations of one another. Understanding that every relationship progresses of its own pace. So realistic expectations. You can't go comparing your other friends that got married at 17 and 18 years old if that's not where you guys are at. You can't go comparing someone who's waiting until they're 30 if that's not what you guys want. Maybe you want to get married right out of college at 22, 23 years old, if that's the age that you are. We talked about how some people are graduating college at 18. They are the exceptions, obviously, to graduating college. I think it's really cool that they graduate that early, but most of us graduated at 22, around that age, 20, 21, 22, 23. I was 22. And so, yeah. And so you want to be setting realistic expectations of your relationship. You're not comparing your relationship to others, and you guys don't fit into that. It's not fair to do that to one another. Also, setting realistic expectations of your relationship itself, meaning that if one person has already verbalized and talked about their boundaries, don't go trying to change them and making them do something that they don't want to do. Hopefully at this point in the stage of your relationship, you guys have like really, really like figured all this out and are ready to be moving forward in this phase, okay? Focus on growth rather than rushing into the next steps. That means rushing to the altar. So, like I said, if you feel ready, you're ready. But it's important that you focus on growth. Okay. We've talked a ton about what growth looks like. There's a lot of things that you need to be working on during this time in order to become a better you so that you can be better in the relationship and have something to bring to the relationship. Okay. Both of you are bringing something. It's not just one. Okay. It's not just one person. It's not just one person. Okay. We're moving on to part 2, individual preparation during this time. So doing the in-between time, the individual preparation. Many of these we've already spoken about, so it's just going to be a reminder. For him, we're going to go through this quickly. Continue saving for the future, for the wedding, for the home, and the family. Remember, men, you need to be preparing well before now for where you guys are going to live. That house, you guys have already talked about it. You already know. Maybe you've already started having the home built at this phase, even before you even get engaged. I know, what a shocker. Most people aren't doing that, and that's because they're stepping all out of order and doing all the things that they weren't supposed to be doing. And this is why I'm giving you advice on how to do it better. Don't have to take the advice, just giving it. Continue sharpening leadership and problem-solving skills through work, family, or home. So also being a leader in hobbies and things like that. Continue growing spiritually and emotionally to lead as a future husband and father. So remembering that you're still going to be having a huge grasp and sharpening all of these skills. Okay. So the grasp is understanding, and then sharpening, doing. Okay. So understanding all these things came at age 14 through like 18. And then sharpening has been coming after the age of 18. Okay. Moving on into adulthood. Ladies, for her, what are you doing during this time individually to prepare, to continue preparing? Continue sharpening the skills of budgeting, cooking, and conflict resolution. Men, you're also doing the same thing, as well as save money for the wedding related expenses, so things that are related to it. But remember, we already talked about who's paying for the reception and the ceremony. And so we're not talking about those expenses, right? If you need a refresher, go back and watch, I believe, episode 2. It may be episode 3, but we did talk about who's paying for this. That's what the episode is entitled. Now you're also going to be talking about insurance for everything and personal goals. So both of you also should be preparing for this, preparing for insurance. A lot of people go into marriage and don't have health insurance. They don't realize that you even need insurance for weddings because a lot happens. People are swindlers out here, and you do need to get some form of insurance to protect you from problems that could arise when it comes to planning your wedding. Insurance for your car, insurance on your house, insurance for your children, insurance. It's expensive. So have you started, at this point in the time, you should have already have insurance, or at least be thinking about which insurance you're going to be going with, so that this isn't some big to-do when we get into the engagement season, okay? Now we're talking about focusing on self-improvement, health, and spiritual growth. So these are also the same thing for the gentlemen, where everyone's going to be focusing on their health, their mental stability, getting out there, working out, having good nutrition, taking yourself, seriously when it comes to your body, and as well as grooming. Okay. So at this point in the phase, that dating before marriage, okay? These are the things that you should be focusing on. Now, you guys, we have belabored a lot of this, and I know that, but we're really bringing it home right now. We're remembering that there's been a process through all of this, and that we're pushing it and preparing ourselves into becoming husband, or becoming a wife, becoming a mother, becoming a father, becoming a helpmate. Okay. So that's why we are talking about these things, so that hopefully you will start putting them into real practice, or you already have been putting them into real practice by the time we get to this phase, because we're not at the engagement yet. We're not there yet, but we will get there. We're going to talk about the whole engagement. We're going to talking about the wedding series in its whole entirety. Okay. Well, we are starting with before you get proposed to. That's where we are at right now. Part 3, building the relationship while living separately, maintaining healthy boundaries. So obviously the subcategory title kind of explains itself. You guys, you've got to set those boundaries for dating, and both need to agree on it. I know that as you go along, the hormones are going to continue to rev up. You may think like, oh, I need to change my mind on how I felt about my first initial boundaries. No, don't do it. Keep them the same. Okay? Keep them the same, especially if you've chosen the boundary of no. And you guys know what I'm talking about. No. Okay? So, keep physical and emotional boundaries that honor both individuals and the relationship. So that's what we were just talking about, making sure that you keep those. Respect each other's independence and family dynamics. So sometimes when we get into a relationship, the other person might feel jealous that you have this amazing relationship with your family that you are trying to keep going. You don't want to leave them. You don't want to steer away from them wholeheartedly just because you now are in a relationship with someone. We all need each other. And so to go and decide, okay, well, I just going to spend all my time with this person, and I don't need anybody else. I don't need, my family anymore. I don't need to now go to family events anymore. That's not a good look, guys. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's not good. Okay. We have to keep those healthy dynamics going in relationships with family, because we're all going to need each other someday. You could get injured, and maybe the only person that can take care of you and help you and be there for you, helping you learn to walk again, is your mom, or even a grandmother or a sibling. Maybe your husband has to continue working to provide for the household. And so that's why it's important that you don't just forget about them. Okay? Your nieces and nephews are growing up. You don't want to forget about them, and instilling some good adult advice to them as they're going into their teenage years. Okay? So that's why it's important to still respect and honor each other's dynamics with family, but also with friends, and our individuality as well. Foster those relationships, and don't feel like, oh, I'm so jealous, they're not spending all 7 days a week with me every single day. That's not healthy. That's not healthy, you guys. That's not healthy. You've got to continue to build your community around you. Okay? It's not just us two, all right? And that's it. It's just not healthy, and it's not going to build you a good foundation in the long run. Deepening communication. So let's talk a little bit about deepening communication. Discuss important topics like faith, family, values, morals, finances, and long-term goals. This is also extremely self-explanatory. Take each and every one of these little parts and go talk about it. Go sit down and talk about it. Don't just wash it over. Don't just assume that he knows how to balance a checkbook. Don't assume that she is going to be, cooking you 3 meals a day. You guys need to talk about, like, is that what you want out of your wife? Maybe that's not what she saw herself doing. Maybe she's like, you know what? I can handle dinner, like a real dinner from scratch, like maybe twice a week. Everything else is going to be pizza, salad, something easy. Maybe she does heat 'em ups. Listen, I'm just being real. I'm just being real. And so you need to talk about what is it that you two are visioning at this point, okay? And your long-term goals. Maybe once you get into the house that you're moving in at the beginning, maybe it's just a starter home. Maybe you're like, you know what, eventually we want to get something bigger. Or maybe the other person's like, you know what, I've always just liked the small little cottage, a tiny little home. I don't want anything bigger than this. Even if we have children, they're all going to have to, like, the girls in one room, the boys in another room. We just need 2 more bedrooms. And we'll put our offices in, like, the den and things like that. The den, the dining area. You got to talk about it. It's important. Okay. So, like I said, take each and every one of those points. Let's read them off one more time. Talk about your faith, your family, your values, your morals, your finances, and long-term goals. Okay. Make sure that you sit down and you do that. I know it's scary, you guys. I know you don't want to hear that they don't have the same idea about the future, about marriage, about living together that you do. But you've got to talk about it. I hear so many people in, like, the dating phase where they're like, I'm not sure if, like, we're super serious. I'm not sure if we're really, like, an item, because, like, I think he's dating somebody else, but I don't know. I don't want to ask. I'm not sure, like, if he wants to get married. I'm not sure if she wants to have kids. Listen, if you start learning how to date the right way, starting at 14, before you ever even start dating, and don't follow what the world is telling you to do, then you will know. All the questions that I just asked, you will know. Because most of them you don't even need to be worried about when you're dating for a marriage. You just don't need to be worried about it, because when you're dating for marriage, why would he be dating other people? That would be silly. You see where I'm saying? So be focused, be intentional when it comes to dating, and especially dating for marriage. For those of you that are taking this thing called life seriously, and that it's not just some ridiculous game. Okay? So now we're going to be talking about building trust and respect. Yes, we need this. Everyone needs to be building trust and respect. Be honest. Be honest about your intentions, feelings, and challenges. Encourage and support each other's growth. We're talking about trust and respect. We're talking about being honest. If your intention is to go to a church to find a good church girl so that you can corrupt her, that's not in good intentions. That's not good intentions at all. It's very much bad intentions. It's wrong. It's wrong. If you're looking for the goody goody girl just so that you could, ruin her life, please don't do that. And women, you need to be vigilant. I know that, like, I was this girl. I was so smiley. I wore my heart on my sleeve. I was just like so bubbly everywhere I went. I was smiling. And it's literally the perfect, like, place for people to come in and take advantage. Okay? Be stronger, women. Be stronger. And men too, be stronger. You can be taken advantage of just like women, okay? Be stronger. Know who you are. Get it together, okay? Know who you are as a human being. Build foundations for yourself, because life is going to get tough and you're going to need something to fall on. And you don't need the worldly things to fall on. We don't need to go down the rabbit trail of what those are, because you know what they are. You know what they are. Don't fall into that trap, because those will become your foundations for dealing with things rather than your faith, okay? It's important that you have that. So encourage one another and support each other's growth. This is a time where you can see that the other person is growing, maybe in work, maybe they're growing in their spirituality, their faith. Maybe they are Christian and they have their faith in God and they're reading their Bible like all the time. And so encourage them, support them. Maybe there's some things that they're doing that you would like to start doing as well in order to grow as an individual before you guys get engaged. Okay? So maybe this is the time where, like, you guys are being so observant of one another that maybe you can also start incorporating some of those habits too. The good ones. The good ones. Okay? That's why we're being supportive and encouraging. Let's keep going. Spending quality time. Balance dating with time spent with family and friends. Engage in activities that help you understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. This is so important, you guys. You've got to talk. You've got to engage. You're going to have strengths. You're going to have weaknesses. There are going to be things that you aren't, like, the most strong pillar in, okay? And that person needs to know that. Maybe you're not good at handling conflict. Maybe you're the person that's still struggling with that by the time you get to the dating phase. That maybe you have, like, parents who, like, didn't treat you very well. And so now the only way you know how to deal with conflict is yelling or running away or hiding in a corner or hiding in a closet. I knew a girl that had to deal with that. The guy literally hid in a closet because, like, he couldn't handle conflict. It's not funny, but that is too much. And so it's important that you talk about these weaknesses, you talk about these struggles, so that hopefully you guys can grow together. You can start growing together in that and finding ways to be doing life better with each other, okay? I'm not saying that, like, you have to just, like, all of a sudden break up with a person because they were hiding in a closet and they don't know how to deal with conflict. Maybe this is a time where you guys learn how to figure it out together and talk about it, okay? And then your strengths. This is a time where both need to be realizing each other's strengths. Maybe that person that's not really good at communicating has somebody that is a really good communicator. And so during that phase, before the proposal, before you get married, that you're already like working through these things. You see that you've seen like some growth happening with that person that was hiding in the closet in the beginning, and they're no longer doing that now. Okay. So that person that is a good communicator, they are the one that's like, okay, no, let's sit down, let's talk about this, come out of the closet and let's talk. Let's really have a conversation, because you don't need to be raising your voices. It's not how you deal with conflict. It's not how you resolve things. Throwing things, yelling, no, no. And if you don't see growth, during this time, maybe it's time to have a conversation of, we need to go our separate ways. Okay. And people need to be honest. People need to be honest. Do you want to get better? Do you want to get better? Don't build your relationship on a lie. At first, when we were together, oh, this person was doing all these things. This person was like, happy-go-lucky. They were joyful. Now, things in life can happen to where like that person does change. Like 2020 was a hot mess, and a lot of people, they started to see the world for what it really is. And so, that can play a part in like your growth and things like that like does change who the person is becoming, right? But that could be a good thing. It could be because it was strengthening them to handle things that come along, that's especially worldly stuff. Okay. Let's keep going. You guys can definitely understand why it's important to have this phase and why it's important to strengthen communication. Part 4, preparing for the proposal and marriage. I had to take a breath because I think people think that they're ready. And I think that most of the time they're confusing that with, well, I just want to have one person to help me to pay all these bills, help me to pay my mortgage or renting an apartment, or I just want one person that is going to be there for me every single day and we can just have intercourse like every day. Those two things are not going to be a strong foundation for marriage. They're not. They're really, really not. You guys need to care for each other. You need to nurture each other. You need to love on each other. Okay? You need to be compassionate. You need to have empathy for one another. You need to understand that now you're doing life together and potentially even raising kids together. Okay? So marriage is more than just about a financial means to an end, that now you have help paying for all this stuff that's so expensive. And now you got someone to sleep with and have intercourse with like every single night, every single day. Listen, it's more than just that. Okay? This is your life partner. This is your honey. All right? So it's important that you know that. You're not going to hear it enough. You're not even in marriage counseling. You're not going to hear it enough. Okay? So just know that that's a big part of my advice to you. Knowing when it's time. Guys, I'm taking a lot of deep breaths because I'm like, oh goodness, we're getting there. We are getting there. We are getting there. Everyone who's like just waiting until we get to planning out the wedding and, planning out all the wedding series of events. I know you guys are getting antsy. We're getting there. We're getting there. All right. Knowing when it's time. Let's talk about his perspective. For him, recognize when finances and your emotional readiness has grown. Okay? Look for signs in the relationship as well that it is progressing in these areas as well. Okay? So you can see that both of you can handle money well. You can see that both of you aren't in like individual like debt, like the debts have been cleared, right? I just love it. I love marriage. I love weddings. I love love. I just love love, you guys. I love seeing like a grandpa with like his grandson walking down the street, holding hands. Little 1-year-old with like grandpa. I love it so much. And love is beautiful. Love is amazing. But love is also charity. And charity is love in action. I don't think a lot of people know that. Charity is love in action. Charity is patient. Charity is kind. It keeps no record of wrong. Okay? Charity is a lot of things. Being there for one another in sickness and in health. Both times. Okay? Sickness and in health. Both come up in our life. Both those times come up in our life. So it's important to be there for one another. Okay? Strengthen one another. All right. So let's find our place. Recognizing, men, that you are ready with your finances. You're ready to put a down payment on a home. You're ready to have your home built. You're ready to go out and build your home if that's what you're going to do yourself. Maybe your father and uncles and grandpas and all that stuff that we talked about before. What you are doing during this time is important, men. You're not just waiting around, hanging out, doing nothing. You are focusing on getting that house together, okay? And if it's not a house, then it's a better apartment. Get a 2-bedroom so you guys have some space, okay? For the offices. You know, a lot of people work from home now. So go ahead and figure out what that looks like, right? Figure out what that looks like. Maybe you have an in-law that may want to come and live with you, or a parent that may want to come live with you at some point. Do you have the extra room? Are you just still living in a tiny little studio apartment or 1-bedroom apartment? There's nothing wrong with that if that's all you can afford during this time. But if at 14 years old, starting when you were getting allowances, all the way to 16 years old when you started your first job, have you been preparing for this? Like we talked about, you were preparing for this along the way, men, so that when it came time, you were ready to put that down payment on a house. You've been living with parents to save money. We talked about how to do this, how to do it, okay? So that's why anybody that haven't seen episodes 1 through 7, you're like, men pay for the house. Like, how are we supposed to do all that in this economy? Well, we talked about it, and there is a way to do it in this economy, okay? If you don't step out of the order. You don't need to get out of college or get out of high school and go get a bunch of roommates and throw your money down on rent, on renting. Don't do it. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. We've talked about that before. Okay. Making sure that these things are aligning with both of you. For the women, for her, be patient. Trust in his timing while continuing to build your personal preparation. So, ladies, remember, let's just give this just a moment to see if it's coming back. All right, here we are. So you are definitely taking that time to also continue to prepare with those personal goals, individual goals that we talked about, as well as making sure that you trust in his timing. Trust in that the man is focusing and recognizing that it's time, okay, to be engaged or not. Don't be just rushing him and trying to tell him, well, he better give me a ring. He better hurry up. He better da 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 da. Listen, when you're dating for marriage, this isn't going to be some huge, long process anyways. You may not even need years to be dating for marriage And while you guys are living separately, remember, at parents' house, and you're not stepping out on those boundaries, you may not need all that time. You may need way less time than that. I'm not going to throw out a time because it's going to be different for everybody, okay? It's going to be different for everybody. You two have to figure out what that looks like, okay? What does that look like? So we're going to be talking about discussing the future. So during this time of the in-between phase, you are discussing the future. You're having those real talks about the future. All right. Have open conversations about engagement timelines and what marriage means to both of you. Don't leave this out. Don't leave this out, you guys. What marriage looks like for both of you is an important question. Have these open conversations, all right, about the engagement timeline. Just be talking about it. Oh, I would love to be engaged in like the spring, Oh, winter's such a nice time. It's the holidays, it's the new year. Why don't we, think about getting engaged at that time? Things like that. Things like that. You also want to be talking about, does she want it to be like a surprise, or does she want to help plan the engagement? There's no right or wrong. I'm the kind of person that loves surprises. I love surprises. So my honey knew that. And so I didn't plan anything. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. And it was beautiful. I didn't know when. I knew nothing. Nothing. Okay. But we're going to talk about more of that in our next episodes. We're also, during this time that you are discussing as a couple right now, start thinking about potential wedding plans, budgeting for it, and continue saving without rushing the timeline. Now, even though you may have been saving prior to knowing this person, before you even started dating, right? We did talk about saving. We did talk about finances. We did talk about not just living check to check, right? We were already putting all of this into practice. You already had a separate savings account for this time as of now. You see how now that we get to that, it's not just like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do if we do decide to get married and we want to get engaged and we don't have any money? You better have some money by this point. You started at 14 years old. Hopefully you were taking advice. All right. So some questions that you two can ask yourself, just sit down and start asking these questions. Okay. I know that you're in group settings when you're going on dates, but maybe this is a time that you're at one of like the family gathering type things, and you guys can just go into like the dining room area or the kitchen and like talk about this. Maybe even talk about it with parents. I know. What? All right, maybe not talk about these with parents, but start talking. All right. Here's some questions that you guys can ask yourself to each other, right? What does marriage look like or mean to you? Like the vision of marriage look like or mean to you? Okay. You may be surprised. You may be surprised that that individual is like, you know what? I'm just probably going to be ignoring my kids while I'm playing video games every night after work. What? What? I hope that you have a reaction to a response like that, because I've actually heard a couple say that. And I was like, this can't be real, but it was real. There was no reaction. The girl just went on and said like what she had a vision for. And her vision was that they would, no, she didn't say they, she said, I would be living in another country in like the next 10 years. And the guy said, with laughter, literally he was laughing. Oh, as you guys can see, like we're not even going to be married anymore in the next 10 years. What? That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. They definitely are not on the same page. So make sure that you guys talk about these things. The next question that you guys can ask yourself is, are you ready for marriage? I know, sounds like a silly question. Are you ready for marriage? We're in this dating phase, right? We're dating with marriage in mind. This is our purpose. Asking the question, are you ready for marriage? Before he proposes is an important question. Maybe she's not ready, and then you're going to go and propose. The man needs to be asking him that question too. Am I ready for marriage? Like, the girl needs to be asking the guy, are you ready for marriage? I know a couple that the guy literally had a heart attack, a stroke, and he was like under, well, how old was he? Oh, he was right at 30 years old. 30 years old, middle of the street in New York City, had a heart attack when he was asked from the girl, like, that's it. We've been together for 3.5 years. What is going on? When are you going to propose to me? Like, middle of the road, middle of the street in New York City. Passed out. Just passed out. Okay, maybe it wasn't a stroke. Maybe it was a heart attack. But he passed out. I had to go to the ER. He had to go to the emergency room because he didn't feel like he was ready. He didn't feel like he was ready. But she was older, and she was like, you know what? Like, we need to figure this out. Like, what's going on? And like, was that her like trusting that he knows the timeline, that he knows when they're ready to be married? No, she wasn't trusting in that at all. She wasn't. All I'm saying is, don't let that be you. All right. Are you ready to buy a house? Men, are you ready to buy a house? To put your lady in? To have a family with? Ladies, are you ready to take care of a house? Do you guys know the size that you want? Because, I mean, there's going to be cleaning, right? You're going to be cleaning the house. Is it a size that you think that you can clean? Or is it too overwhelming? You got to remember that. Or are you going to hire somebody? Have you thought about budgeting for having a maid come and clean your house if that's what you desire to do and you don't want to clean your own house? And in that case, have you decided where you're going to put your valuables so that they aren't stolen when said people are cleaning your house sometimes whenever you're not even there? Money going to cost. Okay? So make sure, like I said, by this phase, like this is episode 8. We've talked a lot in episode 1 through 7. So anyone that's just jumping into episode 8, you're going to be a little bit lost on why I'm talking about these things in, you know, in this way if you haven't had context of episodes 1 through 7. So make sure you watch episodes 1 through 7. All right. The next question you want to ask, are you ready to have insurance for everything? I know you guys are going to say children. I know that's what you guys thought the next question was, but are you ready to have insurance for everything? Insurance on both of us for our health, insurance on the house, insurance on both the cars, insurance on the children, insurance on the wedding. So mostly by this point in your life, hopefully while you guys are dating for marriage, both of you already have health insurance. Both of you already have car insurance. Okay. So those two are already checked off, hopefully. And then now it's just, are you ready to get house insurance? Are you ready to get insurance for our children once we start having children and you get pregnant and things like that? Are we ready to have insurance for that? Are we ready to have insurance for the wedding day? And then there's other things you can get insurance as well, you know, for. And so that's up to you guys to discuss if you want to get those other insurances as well, or any insurance. Like some people don't, and they just kind of take their chances and see what happens. Okay. So are you emotionally ready for marriage? Are you emotionally ready? Emotionally ready. I told you guys about all the roller coasters of doing life with someone who's not you. They don't react to the same things or the same way that you do to the exact same thing. They may react differently. There may be like someone that's very, very sad and you need to console them and learn how to have empathy. Have you been working on that all this time? So knowing when like to be happy. I know it sounds so crazy, but there are people who really don't have an emotional spectrum at all. They don't know how to be happy. They don't know how to be sad. They're emotionally dead. Okay. So Is your partner okay with an emotionally dead person? Okay, I gotta stop laughing. It's not funny. But you need to talk about it. You need to talk about it, you know? Are you compatible at all? That question. I know these questions aren't the questions that you thought that you'd be asking yourself before thinking about proposal and dating for marriage, but are you compatible? At this point, you guys should be able to answer this question. Are you compatible? Now, there's a slew of other questions that you guys could be thinking about and coming up with and asking each other and things like that, depending on your individual situation. These are just some to kind of get you started, okay? And obviously, you want to know, do you want to have children? Like, are you ready? Are you ready? Because when you get married, you're going to be having intercourse. So, you know, a little baby could be made during that time. And so, as a couple, are you ready to have children? Important question. Important question. Okay? Because like I told you, the other two reasons why most people be getting married and they haven't asked themselves any of these other questions, and they don't even know if they're ready with any of these other answers. Not a good sign. My last point for today in episode 8, that in-between phase between dating and the proposal for marriage. Seek mentorship and advice from married couples to understand what works. So seek advice, okay? Mentorship, advice from other married couples, okay? Now, in our next episode, we're going to be talking about some questions that you could talk about with them, because they don't always bring it all, okay? They don't always bring all the tea. So there's going to be some questions about marriage and some of your things that you think could become a challenge, maybe things that you've observed in other marriages. And so you're like, maybe your parents had an interesting marriage that didn't work, or maybe they still stayed married, but it still didn't work. We're gonna go there, guys. We're gonna discuss that. And so you getting to also discuss that with your mentorships, your counselors, your counseling, and your advice from married couples. Okay, so get ready for some more spicy questions tomorrow in our next episode. Okay, we're going to be discussing them in our next episode. You guys, listen, I know that this is not the part that everyone is like so excited for when it comes to planning a wedding. I know. You guys want me to hurry up and get to the wedding event part. All the wedding events and planning them. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. You guys just hang on tight, and I will see you in tomorrow's spicy episode. Bye, guys.
Lights, camera, action, baby, strike a pose. Phones and cameras out, just watch it all unfold. We're the stars of the show, ain't no need for filters. Living life through the lens, capturing our breath. Put away your phones and cameras, let the good times roll. Our content creators got it all under control. From weddings to events, parties, travel and brands, we're living the paparazzi life. It's all in our hands.
Lights, camera, action, we're ready to go. We're professionals, don't you already know? From TikTok to Instagram, we're taking the lead.